My friends, in this episode we're going to talk about some beautiful trams. Okay, we're going to talk about some shite socialist old creaky buses, and we're also going to talk about some beautiful engineering marvels like this trolley bus or this LPG powered bus that we used to have in Slovakia and Czechia. So if you want to learn more, watch this video, and we also might talk about some spinning gorillas. No, I'm only joking, we're not talking about those ones, but if you like the video, remember, one like equals one prayer, and I might be able to summon the spirit of Harambe to come and join us in the next video. So yeah, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and take it over, outside version of myself.
Gonna have to excuse this busted up angle. Now first I'd like to start with buses and my experiences with buses and what sort of buses I was riding in at the time as a child in Slovakia. So first one off the top of my head I can remember is Ikarus.
Now hold on, I'm going to have to stop this guy right there. Now, Ikarus was a Hungarian company, all right, which was absolutely prosperous in the 1800s and early 1900s, obviously. But in 2004, they had some massive legal disputes, all right, and unfortunately, they had to declare bankruptcy in 2018 after a hell of a lot of legal disputes. But you will recognise a hell of a lot of their buses. They made some iconic ones here on the screen, so check them out. Let me know in the comments if you actually recognise these from your country.
It was, for me, the most iconic one, and I was a little kid when those were still around. Essentially, they got decommissioned and they were replaced by Carosa, which I'm going to talk about here as well, because they're legendary as well. Let me know if you know these two and you recognise these brands. Now, Ikarus, in my city of Carosa, where I'm from, they used to have this red livery. They were sort of red and white, essentially looked super old school, super communist, and I can remember they were so hard. Like usually the buses, as they developed, like especially into the Solaris, which we're going to talk about there as well, they were super low to be accessible to all sorts of people, and these literally had steps on some of them. So yeah, pretty inaccessible and very, very old school. I remember the harmonica in the middle, they all had it. I remember they used to have black wheels, and yeah, in my city of Košice they had red and white livery, and I remember just the sound and the smell of diesel, like it was so raw and visceral.
Oh, by the way, and I'm talking specifically about Ikarus 280 and Ikarus 435, which were pretty much dominating the scene in the 70s and 80s. And I remember riding around in these buses and always just seeing and hearing the floors creaking as you were standing in the middle in the little spinny section. Actually quite have some fun memories with those. So anyway, moving on. And guess what, mate? We've got more buses. So yeah, let me pass you over to the man outside, which is me, by the way.
And Ikarus was then replaced by Carosa, which was another one which I remember in my city, which for many years it sported the green and white colour on their public transportation, buses especially. So these Carosas were green and white, I remember. Yeah, they had a slightly updated design, but still very raw and visceral on the inside. I remember the smell of the diesel in the winter, on the cold winter days, because I used to sit at the back near the engine, and I remember coming from where I used to live, which was a seedless.
Now hold on there, Captain, all right? Let me tell you something very interesting. Seedlisko is a term used in Slovakian. In Czech, it's seedliště. And it's basically comprises of housing complexes and essentially commie blocks. And you could call it projects, I guess, in a way. And this was built essentially during a socialist era to bring up the amount of housing for people, because obviously the population was rising and rising after World War II, obviously baby boom and all of that. So yeah, that's how the Eastern Bloc took care of the housing problem. So yeah, back onto the man outside.
And as I was hopping on in the morning to go to school, essentially, they would be starting the engines and you could smell the diesel so much, especially when you were sat at the back because the windows weren't sealed that well. But it kept you nice and warm in the winter, especially on those cold winter afternoons, as I remember as a child, when it was easily like -12, -13, -15 even, and snowy everywhere as I was going to my floorboard trainings after school.
And by the way, just for the record, I said floorball, not floorboards. Okay.
And the seats, I remember as well, there were those seats, you know, that collect dust. The very iconic 90s, like confetti style seats, which I've always really liked, but they've also had that sort of, like if you smash the seat with your hand, basically, like 40 years of dust and ass dust would come out in the air and you would probably die of some sort of horrible disease. The sunset, man, come on. You got to appreciate that. A Solaris, which were like these low-riding buses, which were also, by the way, driving on LPG, because at the time, that was like a very pushed thing in Slovakia.
Oh yeah, by the way, I've just found out while I was doing the research that Solaris is a Polish brand, so yeah, shout out Kurwa. Anyway,
I remember in the late 2000s, early 2010s, when they introduced these buses, like the whole LPG thing was like government induced, and they've really liked that sort of thing. So all the buses sported like a little logo on the back saying I'm running on LPG, which is quite interesting. I like this thing, and very fascinating buses. I'll show you the design. These were also green and white, and then later on, as the generations have been updated and they got some facelifts, I remember they changed to yellow and blue, which are the Košice city colours. Even our football team sports those colours, by the way, so shout out to the yellow and blues, by the way. So anyway, what else we got? Trams, back to it, trams. So I remember the old Skoda tram, if I remember correctly, the old round ones, the iconic ones. I remember my cars are extremely loud, by the way. You could see the raw and visceral, but they're really iconic, that socialist time. And I think a lot of people don't like the design because it ties to the socialist times, but I personally love it. I think they were iconic. And obviously Skoda, by the way, made many trams, and they still make trams.
So anyway, here to tell you more facts about trams. So this specific type is called T3, specifically T3SUCS, okay? And essentially, Prague tram system has shown 98.9% reliability, which I can confirm last year when I spent 6 months in Prague. And essentially, this was the best of the tram. Oh yeah, and little did I know, I've just realised I'm a complete donkey, because it's not a Skoda, it's actually a Tatra, hence why the T3 name. I should have realised that a long time ago. I apologise. I'm a complete and utter donkey.
I remember with these old ones, I remember the doors. They had like an awesome like see-through glass harmonica doors, glass windows, proper old school stuff. Metal chassis, even the floors were metal. It was raw viscera, like metal seats and everything with like a hole down at the bottom. Usually there were red seats on the inside, so it was just old school red seats. With like a couple of them had like a bench seat on the back, or most of them just had a rail, so you could stand around at the back and look out at the massive round window, which it felt like a sauna in the summer, by the way, when the sun was blasting through, and the tram was full of people who were all sweaty and smelly, by the way. But it was nonetheless, it's always fun riding on it. When I was just in Prague riding on one of them, yeah, I love it, by the way. Fun fact, people from Brno call it Shalina, I'm pretty sure. So, but don't say it in Prague, because the Prague lot will hate you. I just like the architecture, man. Like, I don't care about the politics. The architecture was cool, and that's just my opinion. I like brutalism. I like that sort of thing.
Now we're moving on to another one.
First, let me pass you to the man outside.
This year, I'll be going back to Prague again. I'll bring you some content from the trams, man. We can make some tram content. That could be fun. Now, anyway, another one which I wanted to talk about is obviously taxis, all right? Because taxis obviously play another huge part in public transportation. And I remember from my childhood, most of taxis were either Mark 1 Octavias, which, by the way, incredible car. I mean, a funny thing they say about them is that they literally produce diesel on the way, especially the 1.9 TDI. Like on the way down to Bulgaria with your parents, your dad goes, "Oh yeah, it's literally making fuel." Yeah, pretty much. Incredible cars. I remember sitting in the back of them, like when they first introduced those Mark 1 Octavias after the previous Favorites and everything, which were great cars in my opinion.
But get ready for my little waffle, my little love ode to Skoda Octavia.
Very old school compared to this modern new design. And I just love the cars in general. They're iconic. They're like one of my dream cars. Just having a 1.9 TDI Octavia, like I just love them. And they're like 900 quid. Do you know what I mean? But they're great cars. Like as far as cars go, in my opinion. Let me know what you think about them in the comment section below. I remember Skoda Favorit. A few taxis around them when I was a little kid. Obviously, later on, as they were phased out, especially in the early 2000s, with these schemes where people would hand out their old Skoda Felicia, for example, like my grandparents, which I'm incredibly sad about, by the way. When obviously my family, when we were young, when I was a little kid, and we were a young family, our granddad helped us, by the way, shout out granddad, by putting his old Skoda Felicia into a scrappage scheme to give us a chunk of money off Kia Rio, which we had. And obviously which helped at the time, but that Skoda Felicia was iconic, red one. We had so many great memories. I remember the cloth seats and everything on the specific smell they had, you know what I mean? Another public transportation is a trolley bus, all right? These were incredible. I used to love the trolley buses, which had like essentially they run on electricity in a way, as far as I understand it.
Yeah, and by the way, if you're wondering, these trolley buses were so far ahead of their time, man. They drew power from overhead wires using spring-loaded trolley poles, okay? Just running on rubber, as per usual buses, but without the need of having internal combustion engines and polluting the air. So, yeah, ahead of their time, and I wish they brought them back. Give us back our trolley buses, man. Come on.
There were like actual lines essentially across the city, and these trolley buses would be connected to them through their own electrical connection, and you could see the little sparks as they were going through connections between these lines, and these were incredible. I loved them. And in my city, in Košice, they were white and red, and I remember they had these like massive black hubcaps and big black wheels. Like their wheels were massive for some reason. The proportions were very interesting. But anyway, look, that's just a quick little video. I just wanted to experiment filming outside, shooting, and yeah, just giving it a go basically. And we're going to do some more outdoor content. We're going to do some more history outdoor content out here as well in my area, and there is going to be other videos, don't you worry. And I've got another one cooked up right in the chamber. It's going to be good. Subscribe to the channel, let me know what you think below, and yeah, I'll see you in a bit.